the Recording Academy, but he still has his musical chops intact. Now, 30 years ago, when I came to Washington to fight for our First Amendment rights and stand up against the PMRC, I thought that censorship was the biggest problem a musician had to face, and I was wrong. Only a few short years later, the bottom would fall out of my career, and I would discover that even though I had sold millions and millions of records, my and my family's economic survival was not guaranteed. To my surprise, despite the hundreds of thousands of times AFM radio had played my band's songs, we did not receive so much as 1 cent for them playing that. It wasn't long before I was flat broke, this is true, riding a bicycle to a desk job, answering phones, and putting flyers on cars at night. The 90s sucked. But I'm back. I am here with the Grammys on the Hill to fight for today's and for future recording artists so they don't have to suffer the same indignities that so many of us have because we weren't paid fairly for what we did. Fair play for fair pay. It's why we're all here tonight. And now, allow me to bring back to the stage our house band bass player, who also happens to be the president and CEO of the Recording Academy, as well as the president of the Grammy Foundation that we're supporting tonight. As an Academy member, it's good to know we have a real musician at the helm. Fortunately, he only has 4 strings on his instrument, so he's got plenty of time to deal with Grammy business. Just saying. Please join me in giving another warm welcome to the president and CEO of the Recording Academy, Mr. Neil Portnow.
Thank you, Dee. Okay, please look around the room. The creative talent here with us tonight is humbling and awe-inspiring. Who amongst us doesn't consider Smokey Robinson's body of work to be the soundtrack of our lives, or really the soundtrack of American life? And who hasn't marked a joyous occasion by dancing to Kool and the Gang's Celebration? Nobody. And who didn't continually have the infectious hook of All About That Bass in their heads all of last year, right? We know the talented creators here tonight are the reasons the rest of us are here. Whether we're here as advocates or policymakers, we understand the debt of gratitude we owe to those who create the music we love. Sometimes it's easy for us who work in music policy to become focused on segments of our community and fixes to address specific parts of our industry. But I find it's always helpful to think about the actual creators themselves to bring us back to the big picture. Because music makers don't do just one thing. Yes, Smokey Robinson's a legendary songwriter, but he's also an amazing artist and producer, right? And yes, Robert Kool Bell wrote classic Kool and the Gang songs, but he also played, and by the way, continues to play, a killer bass. And Kevin Kadish not only co-wrote and produced Meghan Trainor's debut album, but for many years before that, he had a successful career as a recording artist himself. Music makers don't do just one thing. And so policymakers can't and shouldn't solve just one problem. And so today the music community stands together to call for comprehensive reform that helps all creators. To our friends in Congress, I know sometimes we get unfairly labeled, pardon the pun, as being a disjointed industry, always with a different set of asks. But the facts are proving otherwise. Now, just 2 weeks ago, the music community came together for an industry-wide response to the untenable dysfunction of the current notice and takedown process. It's awful, it's horrific. The Academy joined nearly 20 music associations, performing rights organizations, unions, trade associations such as the RIAA and NMPA in this filing. Together, We represent hundreds of thousands of music creators. They're your constituents from all across the country, united with the businesses that represent them. They're here too, to ask you to update a copyright system designed for a long bygone day of dial-up modems and bulletin boards on monochrome screens. Remember that? Now tomorrow on the Hill, our 200 advocates will personally carry a letter to your offices from a broad and diverse group of music organizations representing different sectors, but joining together in calling for help for all music creators. Just as the more than 1,650 Recording Academy advocates did in more than 330 of your districts last fall. You know, your constituents are calling for your help, and it's more loudly and clearly than ever before. Will you answer their call? Will you? We know that the inevitable dominance and evolution of streaming can be a great boon to our creative life, or it can turn out to be a bust for those who make the music that provides the content and actually fuels those services. Streaming services are sometimes referred to as the celestial jukebox. Well, I can remember the days of the actual jukebox, and I'm sure many of you can too. We happily put a quarter in the slot to hear a song played one time. Today, a play on a streaming service pays a fraction of a penny, shared by all of the creators and copyright owners. That's not a trend we can or should allow to continue. Under the great leadership of House Judiciary Chairman Bob Goodlatte, who's here with us tonight, sir, and Ranking Member John Conyers, thank you both. Congress has taken a very important step of reviewing the Copyright Act with the aim of protecting creators' rights in the 21st century. After this broad review, which is lasting more than 3 years, including 20 hearings with 100 witnesses, numerous national roundtables, and Copyright Office studies, the time for information gathering should now conclude. The time for action should and must begin now. Several bills were introduced this Congress that could help reverse the trend of diminishing payments. You'll continue to hear from more and more of your constituents through calls and visits and editorials, asking you to help bring music licensing into the 21st century. These voices are voices. They're not going away. They're only getting louder. Now, nearly 50 members of Congress are here tonight. You're here because you love and value music and artists. But if you're listening to their music tonight, also listen to their pleas tomorrow. Because if you're in this room, you should be on these bills. The talented creators in this room represent the very pinnacle of the music community. They came to Washington not for themselves, but to ensure that the next generation of music makers can sustain a livelihood with their craft. As stewards of America's music and its vital contributions to our culture, and indeed to the entire world's well-being, we have a deep and ongoing responsibility at a unique time and crossroads between art and commerce and government. Let's be sure that we stand up together in this moment and keep our music playing better than ever today and for the many decades to come. Thank you all so much.
You having fun out there still? All right. And now for our final presentation of the evening, to the great Zach Brown.